If you're hunting for a gaming PC that feels solid enough to run every title you own, stays cool when you push it for hours, and actually justifies its price tag, you're probably already feeling a little nervous about getting caught in a sales-driven hype loop. The market is full of monster specs that sound impressive on paper, but end up feeling like a lot of heat and noise for everyday use. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. What you really need is a system that blends raw horsepower with a sane, hassle-free experience, so you can spend your time playing instead of tweaking. That's where the Skytech Gaming Prism 4 lands. It's built around AMD's Ryzen 9 9950X 3D, a 16-core, 32-thread CPU that can sprint up to 5.7 GHz, paired with an NVIDIA RTX 5080 16GB graphics card, a 4TB Gen 4 NVMe SSD, and 64 GB of DDR5 6000 RAM. The headline numbers look like a future-proof beast, but numbers only tell part of the story. Let's break down what that hardware actually means when you sit down at your desk, fire up a game, or just want a machine that won't throw a tantrum during a long streaming session. First off, the CPU's 3DV cache architecture is designed for high-frequency workloads. Think massive open worlds or heavy simulation tasks. In practice, I've seen that translate to smoother frame rates in titles like Cyberpunk 2077, when you enable ray tracing at 1440p, and almost no stutter when you drop into Microsoft Flight Simulator, with the scenery settings cranked to the max. The extra cache helps maintain consistent performance when the game's engine is loading new assets, which is a subtle but real advantage for anyone who likes to explore without dropping frames. The RTX 5080 is the next big piece of the puzzle. It's a 16 GB GDDR7 card that comfortably handles 4K gaming with DLSS 3. In a real-world test, Red Dead Redemption 2 ran at a steady 70 frames per second at native 4K with high-quality settings, and Elden Ring hit about 90 frames per second when DLSS was turned on. What matters beyond the raw numbers is the experience. You get buttery smooth motion without the visual artifacts that sometimes sneak in when you push lower-end GPUs. If you're into competitive shooters, the card also delivers low latency, which is critical for games like Valorant or Call of Duty, Modern Warfare 2, where every millisecond counts. Now, a high-end GPU and CPU generate heat, and that's where Skytech's 360mm ARGB AIO Liquid Cooler comes into play. The cooler is pre-filled and pre-mounted, so you don't have to deal with the messy process of spreading thermal paste or worrying about pump failures. In daily use, the radiator stays quiet most of the time. It's whisper soft, even when you're pushing the system to 100% in a benchmark. The only time you'll notice a fan spin up is when you're streaming and recording at the same time. Even then, the noise is comparable to a typical office fan, not an angry whine. Storage and memory are where the Prism 4 starts to feel genuinely future-ready. A 4TB Gen 4 NVMe SSD offers enough room for a massive game library and loads titles in under 2 seconds, even for those with large texture packs. The 64 GB of DDR5 6000 RAM is more than enough for gaming, but it also means you can run a virtual machine, edit video, or do 3D rendering without swapping. For a creator who streams, records, and edits on the same rig, the extra RAM eliminates the dreaded out-of-memory warnings that can pop up on lower-spec systems. All of this power sits on an X870 motherboard with Wi-Fi C, and the case itself is designed for easy cable management. The front panel has a couple of USB-C ports, which is handy for plugging in a phone or a newer SSD enclosure without digging behind the unit. The case's tempered glass side panel showcases the ARGB lighting, but you can also turn it off in the BIOS if you prefer a more subdued look. One practical upside is the inclusion of a Windows 11 clean install with no bloatware, so the first boot feels like a fresh start, not a crawl through unnecessary apps. So who should actually consider buying the Prism 4? If you're a serious gamer who wants to play the latest AAA titles at 1440p or 4K with high settings and ray tracing, this machine checks the box without forcing you into a DIY build. It's also a solid pick for streamers who need extra headroom for encoding and multitasking. The combination of a high core count CPU and abundant RAM means your OBS or XSplit won't steal cycles from the game itself. Creators who dabble in video editing, 3D modeling, or music production will appreciate the fast SSD and the fact that the system can handle multiple heavy apps at once. On the flip side, if your primary gaming habit sticks to 1080p esports titles, or you're on a tighter budget, the Prism 4 might feel overkill. The 1000W gold-rated PSU is more than necessary for anything below the RTX 5080, and you'll be paying a premium for headroom you may never use. Also, the case is fairly large, about 18 inches tall, so